Journey IFC strives to create safe spaces to worship God. Know that you are welcome just as you are, regardless of religious background or lack thereof, skin color, political affiliation, sexuality, age, culture, or any other label you own or society throws on you. You are welcomed and celebrated here just as you are.
Hey Journeyers, so I'll be honest, on Sunday I forgot to click the record button, and so today is a re-recording of our Sunday gathering that happened yesterday. And so I'm going to do our reading and I will give my talk. It may be a little different in spirit from what we did then, but I wanted to make sure that if you were joining us online for our Enough for Today series, that you didn't miss the ending of it. So thank you for joining us online. We're excited to do this. Now we'll move into our scripture reading, which comes from Matthew 10, verses 5 through 20. So Jesus sent out the 12 disciples with the following instructions. Do not take a road leading to Gentiles, and do not enter a Samaritan town, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with a skin disease, cast out demons, freely received, freely give. Take no gold or silver or copper in your belts, no bag for your journey or 2 tunics or sandals or a staff, for laborers deserve their food. Whatever town or village you enter, find out who in it is worthy and stay there until you leave. As you enter the house, greet it. If the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. Truly, I tell you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of justice than for that town. I am sending you out like sheep in the midst of wolves, so be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of them, for they will hand you over to councils and flog you in their synagogues, and you will be dragged before governors and kings because of me, as a testimony to them and the Gentiles. When they hand you over, do not worry about how you are to speak or what you are to say, for what you are to say will be given to you at that time. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of God speaking through you. I want to invite us to do this mantra that we've been doing. And so if you aren't familiar with it, I want to teach you it. And it's pretty simple. It has some hand motions, but it goes like this. We'll say, I am enough. Put your hands on your heart. And then you'll say, I have enough. I do enough. Enough is enough. And breathe in, breathe out. And you'll just say enough and rest into that. So I invite you, if you want to close your eyes and do this, or if you just want to follow along, if you just want to listen to the words, that's okay. Do what feels most comfortable to you. But let's do it one more time together. So I am enough. I have enough. I do enough. Enough is enough. I'm wondering if we are starting to believe this mantra yet. Today is the final day of our Enough for Today series, so I hope it's really starting to seep into our bones, this idea that we are enough and that we have and do enough. And to make this a reality, we're going to talk about boundaries today. The spaces where we say, enough is enough, I have hit my limit, that is my boundary. And in saying enough is enough and setting our own boundaries, we can realize that we have, and we do enough. Boundaries seem to be a hot topic these days. There are numerous amounts of self-help books and podcasts on the subjects. Even children are learning about setting boundaries through songs. We have a song that we played at the beginning of our service where these children were singing to cartoons about, their boundaries and saying, please stop, I don't like that. Boundaries are becoming something all around us, even coming from the mouth of babes. Our culture is seeming to become more and more aware that we have the ability to say no and do less so that we can care for ourselves. I'll be honest, I'm so happy to be part of this generation where we all are learning together about our boundaries. And I'm glad that our faith community here called Journey will even talk about boundaries in these kind of religious spaces. In fact, Journey has even done a series on boundaries within the past few years, so if you joined us for that, this may be a bit of a reminder. If not, we're going to dive right back into boundaries and what they mean for us. So that raises the question, what are boundaries? When we hear that word, we may picture walls or, gated communities. We may even think about the limits set, on a golf course or a football field. Boundaries evoke the idea of a space that is set apart for a particular activity or function, knowing that some things are in and some things are out. But when it comes to the boundaries that we are talking about today, I mean the limits, the rules, and guidelines that we have set in our lives so that we can feel safe, healthy, and live our lives on our own terms. My favorite definition of boundaries actually comes from a person named Prentis Hemphill, who is a therapist, a somatic teacher who teaches how to get into your body, and the founder of an organization called the Embodiment Institute. And Hemphill says that boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. Isn't that a beautiful way of putting that? The distance that I can love you and me simultaneously. So, what are the boundaries we can have in our lives so that we can love ourselves and one another at the same time? Well, in my researching this week, I stumbled upon many articles and podcasts that listed all the types of boundaries that we can have in our lives. But I'll say it really is up to us to choose which of these that we actually want to do. And I even found one article that listed 15 categories with several subcategories below that and all of that. We can't dive into all of it, but I do want to read it out loud just so that you hear it and get familiar with some of it. So some of these boundaries are physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, intellectual, time, sexual, material. This one's an interesting one. Digital, even. Relational. This next one's good for churchy kind of spaces. Spiritual, financial, work, social, health and wellness, personal, and energy. That's a lot, right? And while I would love to unpack that all, we simply don't have enough time, and I'm going to say enough is enough. We don't need to get into all that. So instead, I found another resource that grouped all of the boundaries we may choose into 3 main types of boundaries. So we have personal, social, and values-based boundaries. So first off, personal boundaries are how we would like people to treat both our physical bodies and our personal things. We could also say this is how we would like to treat ourselves and our things as well. Personal boundaries are where we figure out what feels good to our bodies. Maybe we like hugs or we prefer a handshake instead. We could also like our possessions to not be touched by anyone, or maybe we're open and we're okay with them being freely shared with those around us. Again, it is up to us to decide. It is what feels good to us personally. Secondly, we have social boundaries. And these are our expectations for the behaviors we deem to be acceptable in the relationships we have with others. This is not only about partners or romantic relationships. This is anytime more than one human is in contact. How do we, as humans, want to be in relationship with other people around us? What do we expect of how much time we spend together, or maybe how we talk about one another, maybe in the same space or when we're apart from each other? Basically, social boundaries are what we are willing and not willing to do with those that we interact with. And finally, there are values-based boundaries, which kind of fill in the gaps where these other 2 don't. And this is less about our bodies or how we relate to one another, and is instead the foundation for how we function in the world. Our values are the beliefs that we hold and the beliefs that we have about the world and in the way in which we want to show up in the world based on those belief systems. Also, this is the ways in which we hope those around us will show up as well, although we cannot choose those boundaries for other people, right? This could be in regards to the amount of time we are willing to work or rest, or how we spend our money, or how we participate politically. This could be what we think of the role of faith and how it should be in our lives or not in our lives. It is what we value in the world and how we ensure that we can live in line with our belief systems. When we start listing all these kinds of boundaries, they kind of blur together, but ultimately boundaries, whether personal, social, or values-based, are the ways we choose to be in relationship with ourselves, with one another, and with the world around us. And so if we can get specific and maybe even write down our limitations and our preferences, we can become clear with what we are and are not okay with. I know personally it can feel harsh to set boundaries at times. I know I can start to feel some guilt when I have to be firm with a boundary I have set. And I know when I've stumbled upon someone else's boundary, whether intentionally or not, it can be a bit uncomfortable to be told no, or I prefer you to treat me in this way. Boundaries can sometimes require us to be assertive with our needs while trying not to become aggressive with them. It's that fine line that we must walk. I think a way that can help with this is to think about boundaries as not something that is against someone else, but instead as something set for ourselves. A personal gift, not a social punishment at others. It is less about saying no to you and more about saying yes to me. It is prioritizing our needs instead of putting others first, which is a controversial thing to say in Christian or Christian-adjacent circles, because aren't we supposed to care for others and put their needs above our own? We are supposed to be selfless, not selfish, right? But it's like that old, airplane line, put the mask on yourself before helping others. Or that other cliche of you can't pour from an empty cup. Boundaries remind us that if we want to be in loving relationship with those around us, we have to learn to care for ourselves and our needs so that we can feel safe to show up for the needs of others. And in creating healthy boundaries for ourselves, we are granting permission for those around us to follow suit and do the same in their lives. In this way, creating boundaries can help others by also helping ourselves. For some reason or another, I don't know what it was, but I was drawn to this text from Matthew 10 about the disciples being sent out into the world. What happens is Jesus gets the 12 disciples together, and then he tells them to go into the towns around them to spread the good news of Jesus and this new way of life that they were promoting. But Jesus gave the disciples some limitations, or as I would like to call them, boundaries, to stay within for their safety and the safety of others. So he said, don't go where you are not wanted or accepted. The people we are looking for are the lost sheep of Israel. So don't force yourself or your way on people who do not want to hear it. Respect their boundaries. And the disciples are told to go out and do a lot of amazing things that seem like gifts, raise the dead, cleanse skin diseases, cast out demons, give freely as they have received freely. All great things, all gifts indeed, but not gifts that should be shoved down people's throats. And the disciples are told that they can't even pack too much. No extra tunic or sandals or cash, for they are going to have to rely on the hospitality of others. Further reason to respect the people that they are going to encounter. You will only be received well if you respect the people first. So, when you go and stay somewhere, only stay as long as you are welcome. Respect their limits on time and hospitality, and if they take you in, share your peace with them and be kind. But when it's time to leave, respect that boundary and go. And Jesus also tells them that even if they mean well and want to help, some people will not receive them in good spirits. So if they go somewhere they are not welcome, Jesus says to shake the dust from your sandals. Shake the dust. Leave that behind you, respect the boundary you have hit, and go on your way, continuing your ministry somewhere else, maybe a a new house, a new town, somewhere you are encouraged to be. And then in the text, we get this reference of Sodom and Gomorrah thrown into there. A place in the Hebrew scriptures that was condemned because the people who lived there were not welcoming or hospitable to strangers or outsiders. Here, Jesus is saying that even in the great tradition of their faith, there have been times when the people of God have not been received well. Strangers like you, God's people, have been told to leave, who have not been accepted. Jesus doesn't say, condemn those people who can't accept you or cause harm to them. No, he says, shake the dust and leave. It is not your responsibility to save them or fix them. It never is that. Jesus says, go where you are welcome. Jesus then warns the disciples that if they do cross boundaries, or if they stay too long in a place, or if they cause trouble, they can put their own lives at risk. You are not getting a free pass to do as you please. You must respect the people you are meeting. Jesus tells them to be as wise as snakes and as innocent as doves. And I love that imagery there. Wise as snakes and innocent as doves. Because they're going to be doing some dangerous things. So be careful and make intentional and wise choices. But maintain your innocence. Cause no harm. And if you find yourself in a dangerous place, before a council maybe, speak the words that come to you, the words on your heart. Speak your truth. The phrase I've been lingering with all week from this text that I could not get out of my head all week is shake the dust. If you are not welcome, shake the dust and move on. And this phrase actually led me to the poem that we played that you can actually find online called Shake the Dust by Anis Mojgani. Mojgani once described as a trickster, a philosopher, theologian, and a rock star. I thought that was the coolest way of giving someone an intro. And he's an awarded slam poet and was the 10th poet laureate of the state of Oregon. I don't know how you get that, but that's really cool. And I really think that his work speaks for itself. He is a stellar poet. So when I found the recording of Mojgani reciting Shake the Dust, I was blown away. But I was also challenged by what this phrase meant in his poem and in this reading from Matthew 10. Shake the dust. This poem is a list of all who the poem is for, which is an interesting thing to write a poem of, the entire poem is just the list. It's interesting. But in that list, we have all these kinds of people, the schoolyard wimps and the bullies, the benches and the people sitting on them, the 2-year-olds, I love this, speaking part English and part God, the kid late to class because they forgot their locker combination yet again, the men who want love and won't get it, the ones who are told to speak only when you are spoken to and then are never spoken to. It's a fast list, and he rattles it off so fast that you can kind of get lost in it. But a couple of those stand out in a jarring way. For in this list, he also does the celibate pedophiles and the sexist. The people that are usually not left on our list are not even included, at least on the good list as we see it, right? But for Mojgani, the list includes everyone. And to each in the list, Mojgani says the words, shake the dust. He says, do not forget yourselves. Don't let the dust, and I love this line, don't let the dust collect in your veins. You, whoever you are, and whatever defines you, this poem is for you. And it's a call to remember who you are and to shake the dust off of life and keep on living. Walk into life, breathe it in, as he writes. So when the world knocks at your door, clutch the knob tightly and open on up and run forward. I have no idea if Mojgani was inspired by Jesus' words in Matthew 10, but I find the parallels so intriguing. Here we have a story of Jesus helping the disciples learn how to respect the boundaries of others, and in response to a boundary, the disciples are told to shake the dust and continue on. So why must the list of people in Mojgani's poem and the disciples in Matthew 10 do this same thing, shake the dust? It seems to me that Mojgani is saying to all of us that when we come to our limits, our boundaries maybe, when we are faced with who we are and what we need, instead of cowering down and being silenced, we can respect the limitations for what they are, shake the dust, and keep on going. As we think about boundaries, I want us to also think about how we respond to the boundaries of others. When someone says, like the children's song that we listen to, please stop, I don't like that, I'm feeling uncomfortable, I need more space. We don't have to condemn them for setting that limit or condemn ourselves because they had to set that limit with us. Instead, what we can do is shake the dust and respect that boundary and continue on, knowing that those boundaries allow both of us to love one another simultaneously, right? Even if those people don't make our list or believe what we believe, or even if they do not receive us well, we can receive their boundaries well. Throughout this series of ours, we have continued to state that we are enough. And I really think we mean that. Each and every person, regardless of who we are and the labels we hold, we are enough. And when we learn to share what we have, we can have enough. All of us can. And when we recognize our limitations and honor them, we can see that we all are doing just enough as we are doing the best we can with what we have available. When the world starts to make us feel like these things are not true, we can be firm in our boundaries and proclaim enough is enough. We can stand in our truth, in God's truth, that we are enough. And if we are not received well, if people refuse to see us for who we are, who God made us to be, we can shake the dust, open on up, and run forward. Instead of letting the dust settle in our veins and making us forget who we are, we can shake the dust, honor each other's boundaries, and continue on living in a space that welcomes who we are and the boundaries we have chosen to hold. Journey, we are being called into a world that wants and needs us exactly as we are. So let us go where we are welcome. And let us go where we are respected. And let us share the same respect for those we meet along the way. May we never forget that we are enough. And that we have enough. And that we do enough. And we know when to say enough is enough. May it be so. Amen. So my blessing today is actually something that I say often at Journey. And it's something I learned from one of my bosses, Meredith Rogers, who's an amazing, amazing human, when I worked at a church camp. And she would say it every night of camp. And the following summer, whenever she had moved on to another job, I would say it every night at the end of camp. And someone actually made me a painting of it with the chapel space at this camp. And I keep it by my desk right over here. But I thought I would show it to you since we're online. You may not be able to read it, but what it says is, there is nothing you can do to make God love you any more, and there is nothing you can do to make God love you any less. So live into that truth and go in peace. Journey, this is my blessing. So I pray that you go in peace, knowing that you are so loved, and that you are enough. You have enough, you do enough. You know your limitations, and we celebrate you as you are. Go in peace. Amen.